Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 164 of the Nope Coach podcast, The 5-Minute Funeral. I'm your host, Suzanne Culberg. And before we dive into today's episode, I've just arrived back from my trip to Tasmania. So if you're new listening in, an update, I live in Sydney, Australia currently, and my extended family lives in Tasmania. So I have spent the last 5 days down there solo, so without my children. And I arrive home and my kids are convinced that I'm the orca on The Masked Singer Australia, which is currently live, because firstly they've collated all the evidence, which cracks me up. Firstly, an orca is my favorite animal. Orca killer whale is my favorite animal. Secondly, the song choice, A B C D E F U or whatever the song is. They're like, of course you would sing that, mum, and you would make it, friendly for the time slot that the show is on. Thirdly, the shorts where they give the clues is filmed at Raging Waters, which is really, really close to where we live. So they're convinced that I didn't actually go to Tasmania to see the extended family. Instead, been secretly the orca on The Masked Singer, which I laugh at so hard. And I was like, counterpoint, I'm not actually famous. And they're like, well, you have a podcast, you have a top-rated podcast, you're totally famous. So anyway, I thought that was amusing and an aside that I would share with you guys. So the topic of today's episode, the 5-minute funeral, I was reminded about this from a past client who messaged me this morning. Shout out, you know who you are. Was commenting on one of my previous episodes, which was being offended, and gave me a little context about what's been happening in her life. And she said, so I had a 5-minute funeral. And I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't yet spoken about that on the podcast. Thank you so much. You've given me the topic. So shout out to you. You know who you are. Thank you very much. So often, particularly as adults, we aren't very adept at feeling our feelings. We're really good at shoving them down with food or alcohol or work or shopping or gambling or numbing or scrolling or whatever else. But we're not particularly good at feeling them. And something Brene Brown says, which I particularly resonate with, pardon me a moment. Thank goodness for the mute button. I had a little sneeze happening. Brene Brown says is that you can't selectively numb. So when you numb out one feeling, you numb them all. So if you're unable to touch sadness, grief, disappointment, anger, frustration, it's also more challenging to touch what we prefer to feel: joy, happiness, the excitement, hopefulness, Not that we want to label feelings, emotions as good or bad, though there are ones that are more easy and enjoyable and fun to feel, and ones that are less so. But when we numb across the board. So the idea of the 5-minute funeral is that when something happens and you feel, it could be grief or sadness, it could be shame or embarrassment, it could be anger or disappointment. Like, instead of reaching for your numbing strategies, and in the beginning, this is not as easy to do as it sounds, because often you don't realize that you've numbed something until hand is scrounging around the empty packet of Tim Tams, or you're at the crackle of the empty packet of chips, and you're like, oh my goodness, I just, blew my way through an entire family block. I didn't even realize. So in the beginning, although this sounds really simple, it's not necessarily easy. So what is it and how does it work? 5-minute funeral. You notice a feeling. And as I said, in the beginning, you might not notice, but when you do notice, like, oh, I was really hoping that this would work out and it fell through. Or, grief. Grief is an interesting emotion. I'm going to record a whole podcast on that separately, but whatever it is that comes up for you, set yourself an alarm for 5 minutes on your iPhone or your smartphone or whatever device that you use. 5 minutes, hit start. And for that 5 minutes, allow yourself to fully feel the feeling, to be present with it, to notice where it is in your body, the sadness, the guilt, the shame, the disappointment, whatever it is. For me, I find it a lot easier to get in touch with my emotions with music. So there's particular pieces of music that help me touch the sadness, or even the anger, depending on the music choice. But you might have a playlist queued up for different emotions. But if you don't have that, like, just start with what you've got. And for that 5 minutes, allow whatever it is to be. It's not forever. It's just 5 minutes. Cry, yell, rage, stomp, hit a pillow, whatever it is. And when the alarm goes off, funeral's over, that's it. Go about the rest of your day. It is amazing how long 5 minutes of presence feels like it actually goes for. Sometimes I swear I can hit the start and I can feel like it's been an hour. So I go and turn my phone over to check, is this thing counting down? And it's been like 2 minutes, maybe 3. Like 5 minutes of really being present with the emotion feels like forever. And it's amazing how just sitting with it for that period of time, I think it's because you actually are feeling it. You're allowing it to move through you. An emotion, energy in motion. When we numb, when we shove it down with food, when we ignore it, when we fill ourselves up so full that we can't feel anything, it's like we're microdosing and we're extending it out, and we're making it that much worse than if we actually sit with it. And it's as I said, it's really simple, but it's not necessarily easy. And often the story you will tell yourself, I don't have 5 minutes. I'm too busy. I'm working. I'm this, I'm that. But how much time do you have to scroll Facebook or to look at Instagram? Or how long does it take you to go and get that food out of the cupboard and wolf it down? Like, it does take a couple of minutes. The things that you're doing do take time. You're just choosing to invest the time differently. If you're at a workplace, you may need to, get up from your desk, go into the bathroom, into a stall, close the door, or whatever. But just really allowing yourself that break to feel whatever it else is that you're feeling, the 5 minute funeral. And then just when the alarm goes off, go back about your merry way. It's, as I said, it's a total game changer. And it's something that I utilize quite a lot. And when you have all these things I suggest on the podcast, like we're at episode 164 now. A lot of these episodes do suggest a tool, a practice, a prompt. You can look at these and feel totally overwhelmed. Like, there's only 24 hours in the day, Suze. How am I supposed to know all of this? You don't need to. Imagine each of these things are like, if you were a tradie, like a plumber or an electrician or something, you would have, tools on your tool belt. And then depending on the circumstance, you would decide which tool to use in that situation. All of these things, the journaling, the meditation, the 5 minute funeral, the pennies, they are all tools on your mental, emotional, spiritual tool belt. And then it's up to you to decide which one to use in the correct moment, and also which ones you're more comfortable with. Like, there's some that we lean towards and there's some that we lean away from. For me personally, I know I talk and teach a lot about journaling, but left to my own devices, I really struggle with it, even though it's one of the most transformational. Journaling and meditation for me are the most transformational, have the most impact, but they're often the easiest to skip. But this one, you don't need a pen or paper. You don't need to do anything other than set an alarm for 5 minutes. You can choose a song if that, floats your boat, but you don't need to. But 5 minutes of feeling your feelings, if you decided to do 1 5 minute funeral per day, and, this is your mission, should you choose to accept it, for anybody listening, do this for 2 weeks, 14 days, back to back, and notice what happens. Notice how your general feelings are feeling at the end of that time, when you've given yourself 5 minutes dedicated time each day to feel whatever it is that is present for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Trust that you've enjoyed the episode. If you are not yet on my email list, head over to suzanneculberg.com. It's my website. Click on the newsletter, pop your details in there. I'd love to visit your inbox once a week or so. Hope to catch you on the next one. And as always, if you have an episode suggestion, if you have something you'd like to hear me talk about, head over to the website, suzanneculberg.com, click on the contact button, and there is some, you should just go there anyway for the pure fun of it. But send me through any suggestions. I can't guarantee that I'll do them all, but I do love them. And sometimes, the messages and things trigger the episodes. much like today's one. Thank you for joining me. Catch you in the next one. Bye for now.